From PBS News Student Reporting Labs
and WETA,
this is On Our Minds
with Evelyn
and Eason,
a podcast made by teens for teens,
telling stories about who inspires us. Hey Evelyn.
Hi Eason.
You know, I was thinking the other day, this season has been very heavy on books and authors, but we never really talked about our favorite books, so I thought maybe we could take this time in this episode to talk about some books we've read.
Yeah, what's your favorite book, Eason?
As much as I feel like I'm 18 years old and saying this, it's probably still the Harry Potter series.
Yeah, I did really like the movies. I haven't read the books though.
I can't believe this.
Sue me.
Okay, I read Harry Potter like 20 times. That's how obsessed with Harry Potter I was.
Like
in Chinese.
Each book 20 times.
Like the whole thing, like the series 20 times.
Oh my God.
And Percy Jackson. That was really good.
Okay, so what did you take away from Harry Potter?
Voldemort was bad. Harry Potter was good. Good guys versus bad guys, and then Harry Potter was a cool guy that won.
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of the overall theme with these kinds of like children fiction is that there's a very distinct line between good and evil. But I feel like in real life, the line between good and evil is more nuanced and more vague.
Yeah, I agree. I think, it's easy in Harry Potter Harry Potter or Percy Jackson to go like, you're the hero, Harry. Voldemort tried to kill your mom, and then you're gonna go find your way through the wizarding world and like kill Voldemort in the end, and you're the big hero everyone talks about. But I think like in the real world, it's really hard to say that, and a lot of that is where the justice system comes in. Our justice system of everyone's innocent until proven guilty, but then there comes a problem. What if you're wrongly accused of something that you didn't do?
Yeah, that really relates to our conversation today with Bryan Stevenson, who's the author of Just Mercy. And if you haven't read the book or seen the movie, here's what you need to know. So it's a true story, and after graduating from Harvard Law School, Bryan Stevenson moved to Alabama. One of his first cases was defending Walter McMillian, who was sentenced to death for a murder he didn't commit. The story follows Stevenson as he tirelessly fights for McMillian's life.
Well, hi, Mr. Stevenson. Thank you so much for speaking with me today. It really is an honor.
Oh, well, thank you. Appreciate that.
I want to say I read your memoir, Just Mercy, a few years back when students at Brookline High School were required to read it as incoming freshmen. It pushed me to action. It pushed a lot of my friends to action. Take work in the community, volunteer, serve the underserved. And so I do just want to say thank you.
But that's wonderful. Thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely. Just Mercy resonated very deeply with me, resonated with a lot of people, especially the story of Walter McMillian, who was convicted of a murder that he did not commit, sentenced to life in prison. You were a young lawyer working to try and get his conviction overturned, and you worked for many, many years on that. How did you keep yourself going through, the frustration that accompanied that?
Yeah, I think whenever you are trying to help somebody who's being unjustly treated, he was condemned to execution. He was locked into a cell. For me, you keep going because you know that whatever you're struggling to overcome, whatever the challenges you're facing, they're even greater for your clients. And going into his community and meeting people who also felt convicted by his circumstance because they were there with him when this crime took place, and they felt like they were being convicted, they were being sentenced, being disbelieved, being marginalized, being ignored, and living or seeing people living with the burden of all of that. You just want to respond. And however challenging it was for me, for us, and it was challenging. We got death threats and bomb threats, and all kinds of people kept trying to prevent us from doing the things we needed to do to exonerate him. But I never forgot that things were much worse for the people I was representing, for him, for his family, for that community. And that gives you a perspective. And I think when you know that whatever the weight you're carrying isn't the heaviest weight, that other people are carrying things heavier than that, it makes you believe that if they don't stop, you don't stop. If they don't give up, you don't give up. And that's the power of being in relationship with the people that you represent. And that's the great gift that my work has given to me is, I've been able to stand next to people who are condemned, who are imprisoned, who are disfavored, who are sometimes hated. And when you get to stand next to someone in that situation, you can sometimes harness, the power of grace and mercy and love, and see some really beautiful things come out of that. So that's very energizing, and that has certainly sustained my work.
Could you ever have imagined growing up that you would have written an award-winning memoir and have a movie based on your life story?
Yeah, no, I could not imagine that at all. I'm still surprised, to be honest, by everything I've been able to experience. I just wanted to make my mom proud. Just wanted to make the people in our community proud, because we were marginalized, and we were told for so long that we weren't fit to be in these public spaces. And so whether it was on an athletic field or in some musical space or in an academic space, I just wanted to persuade people that they were wrong about the community that I came from. And that was one of the really animating aspects of my life as a teenager. But I had no idea that I'd get to do some of the things I got to do. I just wanted to make a difference for the people around me who I saw suffering. And that's the upside, if you will, of growing up where I grew up. I got to understand the harm that's connected with bigotry and hatred. I got to see the harm of poverty and exclusion. I got to see the harm of disfavoring a group of people. And because I saw that, I never doubted that there was a need to address that. I didn't want to be hated by my peers. I wanted to do well. I played sports and I played music, and music, probably even more than sports, really helped me to cope as a teenager, because it was a place where you could just get lost. And I started playing the piano when I was very small, very young, and it became just this really sacred space where you could go into that world and imagine things and experience things and hear things that felt beautiful and affirming. And I was fortunate to be in a place where, despite a lot of economic hardship, there was also a lot of love. That's why I work so hard with the kids I represent now, when I see that they haven't experienced the kind of love that every teen should experience. Being a teenager is hard, just in a lot of ways. But the most effective antidote to all aspects of what makes being a teenager hard is to have someone that loves you and takes care of you. And whether it's a parent or a sibling or a grandparent or a friend, it's the antidote to almost all of the challenging things you have to navigate. And so for many of my young clients, I want to provide that, because it was provided to me when I was a kid.
What message do you give to young people, particularly those in marginalized communities who look at the systemic barriers you've described and say, those are just too great to overcome?
Yeah. It's an important question. I think what I've learned even more recently that I want to share with young people is that all of these challenges are real. For Black and brown kids, the presumption of dangerousness and guilt is real. For a lot of kids, the emotional and mental challenge of living in a world where you're constantly being judged on social media, it's real. The barriers, the pressures, all of that is real. And so it's easy to feel like it's just more than you can manage. And what I feel a need to kind of share with people is that there are people who have come before us who have found a way to do so much more with so much less. They found a way to persevere and to survive and to overcome hardships and difficulties. And I think when we know more about them, their stories, their lives, it's really helpful for us. And that's the gift that I want to give to young people, is that despite the hardship, that's not what defines you. The barriers don't define you. The obstacles don't define you. Your grades don't define you. The challenges that your mistakes don't define you. What defines you is ultimately your capacity to understand the beauty that's inside of you, your capacity to love, your capacity to care, your capacity to be compassionate. Those are the things that I think ultimately define us. And so if you've made a mistake, you're not just a mistake. If you didn't get the right grades that you wanted, you're not just your grades. If you didn't kind of do the things you wanted to do in this space or that space, those disappointments are not the end of the story. And I'm really proud that I know some beautiful, beautiful young people, and some of them are incarcerated. Some of them are in prison. Some have been told that they're fit only to die in prison, but I know that's not right. And that's really the gift that we can discover if we just struggle and understand who we are.
I myself am interested in criminal justice.
Yeah.
You know, I know a lot of people of my friends who are interested in criminal justice. How do you think that young people, especially those in high school, can sort of get involved, become effective advocates for criminal justice?
Well,
reform?
I mean, I'm very hopeful about your generation. I mean, first of all, you're bringing to these issues more skills, more learning, more knowledge. You can research, write better, all of these things than the generations that come before. And there are a lot of things that have happened over the last half century to make it slightly easier for people to develop the skills that I think are going to be important. So I'm not worried about your capacity to do it. The hard part is just kind of finding the courage to do the things that must be done. And that's where working with the communities that you want to help, I think, can be so important. If you're afraid you don't have the strength to do something, if you're afraid that you may not know what to say, if you're afraid that things may not go the way you want them to, and that causes you to not do something, then I think spending time with people who are struggling, who are disfavored, who are marginalized is the perfect response, because you'll see in their struggle a courage, a power. We've got an anti-poverty program we're doing now where we're providing support to families that are food insecure. And they're some of the most amazing people you'll ever want to meet, because they are struggling to find a way forward with so few resources, but yet they have that hope, that strength. And I think that's what will be important for young people if they want to make a change in the world, if they want to do justice. And if we can harness the courage and the compassion and the commitment necessary, I'm very hopeful about the future.
Well, thank you so
You're
much, Mr.
very
Stevenson.
welcome.
This was
You're very welcome.
this is a pleasure and an honor.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it.
One of the things that really stood out to me during the conversation was Bryan Stevenson saying that what truly defines us is our ability to recognize our inner beauty. And I definitely agree with that message, but I think for a lot of teenagers out there, they might find this message slightly abstract in the sense that it's not concrete enough for them to know what type of action to take in order to find that inner self-love and confidence. So I kind of wanted to ask about your perspective on this.
Yeah, I think it's an abstract concept to just tell someone to be like, have confidence in yourself, find the beauty in yourself. It's kind of hard to do that alone, which is why I think another part of this interview comes in where he says, the most effective antidote to all the aspects of what makes a teenager hard is just someone that loves you and takes care of you. I think it's, this season's theme is who inspires you. And it's great to find that person who inspires you and having that someone that supports you and allows you to discover that beauty in yourself.
Yeah, I agree. And I often find that the people around me that have the most amount of self-confidence and self-love are people who are surrounded by a very loving and supportive community. I don't know if you've noticed that.
So you need to find those people in your life. And it's wonderful how Bryan Stevenson even says in this interview, he kind of gives me a little bit of that inspiration and like self-confidence. I think he said, he has great hopes for our generation. And that doesn't only apply to criminal justice. I think it's really nice to hear that coming from an older generation, because all you hear is just like people talking about how our generation's like bad, how we don't have a good attention span, how we can't figure out like how to do things the old way, or like we don't have enough like grittiness in our life. But it's great to hear that people do have belief in our generation. We do have our strong suits.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with his perspective on that. I think our generation is almost more efficient when it comes to spreading information and advocacy around, because we have tools like this podcast. Just one more episode from this season. We'll be hearing stories from inspiring leaders and mentors in our communities.
Today's segments were produced by Kiran from Brookline, Massachusetts.
Lead podcast producer Briget Ganske produced this episode with editing and mixing by Genesis Magpayo and help from Wyatt Mayes.
Ryan James is our camera and audio operator.
Approval and oversight by editorial director Marie Cusick and executive producer Leah Clapman.
Theme music by Isaiah Brown. Additional music from Blue Dot Sessions.
See you next week. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we agree.
I was just waiting for that to
Oh, okay.
back down. Yeah.
Okay, what did I even say before? I was like,
I don't remember. It's your fault for posing such a
deep philosophical question that
it's not
doomed
a
us
deep
all.
philosophical question. It's just a hard question.